Century 21 Realty Management, 647-5003, or visit the website, laderatowerguam.com or guamproperties.com.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they will continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $4,100 by calling Family Finance in Hagåtña at 671-475-4545, Upper Tumon 671-647-5626, or in Dededo 671-633-4473.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's what we talk about here on the show every day except Saturday and Sunday, and we'd like to be here Saturday and Sunday. We don't like Saturday and Sunday. We don't like Friday, because it means no tall tales for 70 straight hours. It's tough on Jose and I, but somehow we make it through. I don't know exactly how we do it, but we do it. So today is the end of another week and the beginning of another month. And my custom is that on the first day of every month, I read the Tall Tales Rules of Engagement. Well, I let the first of this month get away from me, and the second, better late than never. So I read the rules of engagement, kind of explaining to you the customs and traditions, rules and regs, etc. of Tall Tales, knowing that as many tailgaters as there are out there in our international radio listening audience, new folks are joining a lot every day. And there are probably times when they say, gosh, I wonder why Bob does that on Tall Tales. Or why is Jose always honking that horn on Tall Tales? So that's why I put together the rules of engagement here. And I'll go through it again today. And in case you, if you need further study, I'll be doing it again on the 1st of March. But here we go. Listen to the radio talkers. Read the blogs and blog comments in the papers. Check out the conversations in the bars and coffee shops, and it soon becomes apparent that answers are often more abundant than questions concerning the important issues of the day. One of the functions of Tall Tales will be to state the questions for those answers that many seem so sure of, and then respond to those questions. Here are some of the answers that will be dealt with in coming weeks, not necessarily in the order of their occurrence or importance. Number one, you can carry any gun, anywhere, anytime. Number two, we're second-class citizens. Number three, there should be term limits for senators. Number 8, the Chamorro-only vote is or is not unconstitutional. Number 14, the U.S. should, pursuant to the Treaty of Paris, establish the civil rights of the people of Guam. You get the idea what these topics are all about. I've got a list of 24 of them, and they're also my default questions. And that rare occasion, if I ever run out of things to talk about, you really need to have an imagination to consider. Yeah, consider me running out of things to talk about. But then I can always go to the default list and pick up interesting topics from there. Now, I've told you there are 24 on the list, but in addition to that, that's 1 through 24. In addition to that, there's also number 0, number 00, and number 000. And here's how number 0 goes. Bob doesn't know what he's talking about. Now, you're always free to call in and tell Jose, Bob doesn't know what he's talking about. I got to go on the air and set him straight on some of the things that he said. And that's the essence of Tall Tales. It's the essence of talk radio. And I'm very magnanimous and open-minded here. After I've explained the topic, if you call in and you insist on being wrong, even after you've heard my explanation, I will protect your right to be wrong. Can't be any more fair than that, right, Jose?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's number 0. It's number 00. Bob still doesn't know what he's talking about. So the idea here is don't be shy when it comes to calling into Tall Tales. We'll entertain everybody. We'll give everyone a friendly ear if you want to add to the show. And then number 000 goes like this. Bob, you don't know Jack. Yeah, and in order to understand the meaning of the statement, Bob, you still don't know Jack, you'd have to spend a little bit of time in one of the drive-thrus from one of our fast food restaurants here. McDonald's will do. Okay, so that's how we start here. Now, this list is not to suggest that there aren't plenty of other interesting questions or answers to take up every day. There are, and they can be addressed. Usually serious, sometimes humorous, Tall Tales will examine current events, government, and politics, and occasionally drift into history, culture, religion, law, and once in a great, great while, but only very, very cautiously, rumors and gossips. I want you to know that the last word there is plural, gossips. Tall Tales is structured, but can often entertain whatever callers want to discuss. Tall Tales is an issue-driven, fact-oriented, interactive talk show that invites audience participation. It has been the top-rated FM afternoon show in Micronesia. The Point is Pika's best radio station for 2021 and 2022. Now, the next part here of the rules of engagement, the subtitle is Facts-No-Nos. Starting out like this. Well, they say, everybody knows that. Well, we've always done it that way. There's no doubt in my mind. No, that's not how you introduce facts into Tall Tales. If there are facts, we kind of want you to state the facts instead of saying, well, everybody knows that the governor is this, that, or the other thing. If you find yourself saying everybody knows or they say, put the brakes on real quick, because that's not the way to start a good talk radio conversation. So how about a little analysis and maybe some critical thinking? Critical thinking thrives on Tall Tales. Don't look for an abundance of common sense on Tall Tales. Here's why. Your common sense is what tells you, 1, the world is flat. It's just your common sense. You look out the window, the world is flat. Number 2, iron ships could never float. You got a chunk of iron and you throw it in the bathtub, what happens to it, Jose?
It sinks.
It sinks. So iron ships could never float. And number 3, an object that's heavier than air could never fly. That's what your common sense tells you. So on the other hand, common sense is to be valued, but not when it's a synonym for reverence for the status quo or timidity. While an instant and firm grasp of the obvious may occasionally be necessary, sometimes it's good to delve into the theoretical and occasionally examine the what ifs. Common sense, or call it common sense if it is, right, Tom? Let's argue without being argumentative. Let's disagree without being disagreeable. Let's not play pin the tail on the talk show host. Now, you remember when you were a kid and somebody would put a picture of the donkey on the wall and you'd put on a blindfold and you'd be given the donkey's tail with a pin and you were supposed to pin the tail. We don't play pin the tail on the talk show.
Nope.
Here on Tall Tales. Now, here's a caveat about the show. Look for provocative content on Tall Tales. Tall Tales thrives on disagreement. It's not my job to get everyone working together, thinking alike, joining hands and singing Kumbaya around the campfire, ghostwriting editorials for the Daily News. That's not what Tall Tales is all about. Because disagreement is often what's required if we're going to engage in real critical thinking. So I mentioned that Tall Tales is an issue-driven, interactive show that invites audience participation. It's been top-rated, and the top-rated show in Micronesia. Jan usa dos na lenguaje, ifino English, jan ifino Chamorro loqui, y programata. Guajo idemizo host jan budlon, kasi, frijón jan natzelek, I hope. Tall Tales is the name, so look out for sarcasm, exaggeration, facetiousness, and for the tongue-in-cheek aspects of the show, and listen for Jose's horn. I'm going to tell you how that came about. Back during the days when our governor set up checkpoints along Marine Corps Drive to stomp out the Wuhan virus, the pandemic. And what would happen is you'd pull up to the checkpoint, you'd roll your window down, a guardsman would come along, a National Guardsman would come along and say, sir, because of the pandemic, we encourage you to keep a 6-foot distance from anyone, wash your hands frequently, wear a mask, stay away from large. Okay, you can go, sir. Thank you very much. Yeah, this is why it was done. And of course, we developed long lines of traffic because of this nonsense. And a doctor friend of mine told me off the show that she was called in. She lived south of Agania. She was called in to GRMC, not for an emergency, but not during regular hours. So she jumped in her car and started driving north on Marine Corps Drive and got caught up in the checkpoint traffic jam, swung a U-ey, turned around, and I explained it on the show. She swung a U-ey, turned around, and got to GRMC via Homatak, figuring that would be faster than waiting around in the checkpoint line. Well, later on that day, I got an email from a friend of mine who was listening, and the friend said, you know, that doctor must be new to the island because there are a lot faster ways to get from Agania to GRMC without going through Homatak. And of course, I was just being my usual facetious self. So from then on, we started the custom that when Jose detects that I'm going that direction, he will beep the horn. So don't take Bob seriously on that. Yeah. Thank you, Jose. Yeah.
Anytime, Bob.
Yeah. So sometimes there isn't a whole lot of verbal content in the show because the horn is beeping so often. Yeah, so Tall Tales is the name of the show, and there are two reasons that I call the show Tall Tales. One is the obvious reason. I'm 4 inches beyond the 6-foot mark. I'm a tall guy. When I was in high school 65 years ago, it was actually longer ago than that, I was a big man, believe it or not. I could play center at 6'4". I'd have to, nowadays, if I wanted to play high school basketball, I'd have to be a point guard. Short as I am, right? Anyhow, I'm tall, so that's reason number one. And reason number two, the show is called Tall Tales, is I never let the truth interfere with the telling of a good story. Right, Jose?
Every day.
Okay. So Tall Tales is the name of the show. Sit back and enjoy Zemi Ikotni. Now, Zemi Ikotni is my bilingual play on words. And literally it means press the meat, if you translate it from Fino tomorrow, Fino English. But I turn it around so it's meet the press. The only difference between Meet the Press here and on PMS NBC is that our Meet the Press is so much better than theirs. There's just really no comparison at all. So moving on here, moving along, sit back and enjoy Zemi Ikatni, the boxing card. Now the topics that I don't sit down at the microphone at the beginning of the show and say, well, gosh, what do you think we should talk about today? I come in with a card. Just like if you went to the boxing match, there'd be a card. There would be preliminary bouts. There'd be the heavyweight championship. So I have a card, and I will tell you what's on the card, and that's what we discuss. And on the card, what we're doing is X versus Y, somebody versus somebody else. So that's my opportunity to tell you who's doing what, and to whom, and why they're doing it. So we have the card. We have the big halftime show. The marching band, the cheerleaders, the acrobats, the drill team, in our big halftime show. Yeah. And part of the halftime show is what we call Rogues Gallery. Now, after the halftime show, Jose will tell you how you can get one of the treasured tailgater T-shirts. Take a look at that tailgater shirt. Is that a sharp-looking shirt or not? Yeah, it says right here, Tall Tales, and then right here it says, I'm a tailgater. Wear it with pride. So Jose will tell you how to get one. Do a selfie. After you've done the selfie, send it in to us. And as part of the halftime show, your face wearing that shirt will be part of the Tall Tales Tailgaters Rogues Gallery. Talk about bragging rights, man. There it is. So we've got the big halftime show, the seventh inning stretch, direct from Wrigley Field in Chicago. And then we run the home stretch from Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky. Now, on the show, my job is to make the complex understandable and, if possible, interesting. Sometimes we comfort the afflicted. Sometimes we afflict the comfortable. Tall Tales is interactive, but no soapboxes allowed. No filibusters, no pin the tail on the talk show host either, nor do we permit hostile takeovers. So if you call in, that means that you'll be the caller and I'll be the host.
It sounds about right.
Yeah. Now, we've had a couple of occasions where people got it backwards. You know, they saw that calling Tall Tales was a good place to audition for the next production of the Guam Amateur Theater Guild, or to, you know, kind of make their own bones as talk show hosts. Not a good idea. Okay, finally, your humble, selfie-facing, ever-modest host, that's me, is supported by the Tall Tales think tank, to include the foreign policy guru, the Constitutional Law and Organic Act expert, a research survey and statistic bureau, and a script writer for the 19th floor. So everything you wanted to know about Tall Tales, didn't know that there was actually someone you could ask. I'm still trying to get into Facebook, Jose. Are we turned on?
Yes, sir.
Does Facebook know it?
They should be getting the telegram now.
Good. Is Pony Express still in business?
It's their inner office messaging.
Yeah, I'm just having a hard time here. I think I finally found it. Yeah, there I am. Big as life, as it were. Big as life, twice as ugly. I see that John John S. Coleman is on board today, better known as Johnny Utah.
Indeed.
I didn't put it on the show today, but the hospital in Salt Lake City has gone woke. Yeah, maybe Johnny can call in and tell us about it. So next on the agenda is Demi Kotny. Now, once again, carrying out the explanation here, Demi Kotny, our version of Meet the Press, and when this feature started, it was I think one of the better features of Tall Tales. I would take the editorials from each of our daily papers. I have my blue pencil here. I would unmercifully go through correct grammar, English usage, faulty theories, etc. Having completed that, I would award the coveted blue star to the better of the two editorials, with the understanding that the blue star never went by default. If neither one of them lived up to Tall Tales quality control, there'd be no blue star. So during the times that I've done the Demi Kotny, the Post has received 262 blue stars. The Daily News, 86.5 blue stars. If you're interested, sometime I'll explain where the half came from. And Candid News, that's our friend Troy, has 10 blue stars, and he's not even a commercial newspaper. But he's
that amateur.
Yeah, man, I'll tell you, he's running rings around everybody here, the two TV stations and the two newspapers. Troy did such a good job with his editorial offerings, as did Lee Weber and Helen Middlebrook, that they were they were honored by receiving the coveted Blue Star Award. The Blue Star Award is a white T-shirt with a 5-pointed blue star emblazoned on the shirt. Only 3 in the entire world. People talk in terms of the Pulitzer Prize, an Oscar whatsoever. It pales in comparison to that Blue Star Award, right, Jose? Yeah. So that's how it's supposed to work. But it doesn't work that way anymore. As time went on, the Daily News got a more and more serious case of Gannett. And I think that in order to write editorials for the Daily News during the Gannett era, a person had to be able to type with only one hand and guess which hand it was. Only the left hand could come near your keyboard. You wouldn't want to corrupt it with your right hand. So their editorials were hard left. Fortunately, Kaleo bought the Daily News from Gannett. So Gannett is gone, but the melody lingers on. They just don't. It's not that they're so far hard left. It's just that they're so empty. They fill up a page with words, and after you've read it, you ask yourself, why?
The lyrics are different, but the tune is the same.
Exactly. And then about 3 months ago, the editorial boardroom at the Post went on strike. They don't even do editorials anymore. So between the Post and the Daily News, there's not much production there. I probably will be able to use this blue pencil for the next 5 years because I don't use much ink out of it.
But the Post, why do they need editorials when they have journalists?
Exactly. So this is what the Daily News wants you to think is an editorial today. Our view, get ready for serious nighttime traffic delays. Ever since the removal of medians along Route 1 started in December, we've been waiting for the inevitable traffic delays associated with the transport of power plant parts. That's probably going to be one of the better phrases in the editorial. Power plant parts from Piti to Dedido. On Saturday, the transports begin. self-propelled trailers will move the giant loads north from the Port Authority to the site of the new Ukadu power plant. The loads, weighing up to 176 tons, will crawl up Guam's main street at 1 mile per hour. Sounds like the guy I followed down here on my way to work today, Jose. You know, it's nice to be a safe driver, but every once in a while I get stuck behind somebody. You couldn't get him for any traffic offense out there, but you could get him for illegal parking because he's moving so slow. Anyhow, the loads weighing 176 tons will crawl up the main street at 1 mile per hour. Transports will take place at night, not peak travel hours, to minimize the impact on traffic. But there will be an impact. Even the best case scenario, which would be the scenario with no breakdowns, accidents, or delays, would result in some inconvenience for motorists. Although there will always be a lane open during the transport, motorists should know there will also be a short-term road closures when the trailers travel through intersections. Each trip will take 12 to 14 hours to complete, with the loads heading north between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. Contractors say the loads will be escorted by Guam Police Department vehicles and private vehicles. Fortunately, the contractor has provided a tentative schedule for when the trailers will arrive at different intersections and suggest alternate routes at a website called poweronthemove.org. Sounds like we're back to my doctor friend and the shortcut from Agana to GRMC via Humatak, right? Between 6 p.m. when the trailers are scheduled to turn onto Route 1 and 10 p.m. when the trailers will be driving through Hagatna, motorists are advised to take Routes 6 and 7 to avoid any delays on Marine Corps Drive. To give you an idea of just how slow these trailers move, they are expected to arrive at Route 4 intersection at 10:37 p.m. and then Route 8 intersection at 10:48 p.m. Isn't that interesting, Jose? Between 10:45 and 12:45 p.m. and 12:45 a.m., motorists are advised to use Route 8 as an alternate route, and from 1:45 to 6 a.m., Route 10A is suggested. Like if you know where all of those roads are, you're a better man than I, Gunga Din. Yeah. Like the traffic delays we faced and are facing because of road improvements, these delays are an investment. The Ukadu power plant is expected to provide us with cleaner, more reliable, less expensive supply of energy. That's something we certainly need. Now, this ran on the editorial page. Where it should have ran, there should have been on page 6, there should have been a box down in the bottom of the page that listed everything that's in. This is not an editorial. This is not even close to an editorial. This isn't even news because this stuff has been out there in notices.
It's a fact sheet.
It's a fact sheet, yeah. That's all it is. So they must be so desperate down there to fill the news holes that they'll just scrape together words and throw them in there. They can't even arguably be presented as editorial. So that's what's happened to Zemi Ikotny, which used to be a premier feature on the show.
Ironically, Saturday's transport will probably be more exciting in this editorial.
Yeah. Well, it's moving 1 mile an hour, Jose.
And faster.
Yeah. For sure. Okay, so next on the card, I talk about how I'm going to make Guam great again. But I'm going to take a short break first, and then I'll come back and tell you.
Every company needs money to grow and take on the challenges 2023 will bring.
That's why Bank Pacific's commercial loan officers stand ready to help you.
We offer several programs tailored to assist companies to get to the next step or perhaps for a startup.
Including working with SBA or GITA.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches.
Bank Pacific.
We want to be your partner.
Equal Opportunity Lender. Member FDIC.
Credit conditions apply.
Wishing you a happy, healthy, and prosperous new year from your friends at Security Title. As we clean house for the new year, this is an excellent time to make sure the title to your land is also in order. It doesn't matter if you own a ranch in Inarajan, a house in Dedido, or a hotel in Tumon. Keeping the ownership clear promotes peace in the family and can avoid future misunderstandings. When it comes to your family property, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
For your safety and convenience, please listen to this important message. Lower monthly bills in Guam's energy future are coming. The construction of the Ukadu power plant will begin soon, requiring heavy haul components to be transported from the Port Authority to Ukadu. Expect traffic delays as the transport convoy will be traveling on Marine Corps Drive at 1 mile per hour for 12 hours. Please drive carefully. Log on to poweronthemove.org for more information. Doosan Ukadu Power and Doosan Enerbility thank you for your patience.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So let me talk about a little bit about making Guam great again. And of course, we all know that our former president, Donald Trump, had a slogan, Make America Great Again. And there have been times when I wore my red MAGA hat right here on the show proudly. Robert Underwood is one of the separatists. Robert Underwood, Hope Cristobal, Michael Bavacqua, folks that would like to see Guam separate from the United States and be an independent country. So much of what they say and write is geared in that direction. Robert writes a couple of columns around the island, and one of his columns, he talked in terms of the Proud Boys, you know, which is something if you spend a little time reading national news, you'll know there's a group called the Proud Boys in the United States. Compared to Antifa and Black Lives Matter, they're strictly Bush League. But they get a lot of press because the left always wants to make a lot of noise. You know, the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, white supremacists, terrorists, et cetera, et cetera. So Robert wrote a column about the Proud Boys. Of course, he had to mention Donald Trump in that column. Robert, in addition to other things, has the case of TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. So, you know, if you ever ran into Robert and asked him, how are you feeling today? How are you doing today, Robert? Well, I'd be a whole lot better if I knew that Donald Trump were never run for president again. Well, thank you, Robert. Yeah. So in his column, he talked about the Proud Boys and what horrible people they are. And then he posed the question, do we have any Proud Boys on Guam? And he said, no, but we have Proud Boy wannabes. And then he told us what Proud Boy wannabes do. They talk on the radio. They talk in terms of making Guam great again, et cetera. And I went through his column, and one of my friends sent me a note saying, hey, Bob, he's talking about you. And my response back was, boy, I damn sure hope so. And I hadn't been using Make Guam Great Again, but after I read that column, now it's a part of the show. And I talk about Make Guam Great Again every day. And I've got a list of 13 things now that I'm going to attempt in order to make Guam great again. I'm not going to read the whole list. It's getting kind of long now. I'll just kind of read the highlights for you. But number one, I'm going to combat governmental identity politics. And that's, of course, the separatists right there. If it comes to any sort of, testing the popular will as what a different political status for Guam should be, That's not for everybody. That's only for one particular racial group. Identity politics. And I'm going to champion free speech here on the show. And I'm going to root out systemic racism, which I'll explain a little bit more depth when we get to it. I'm going to encourage a market economy and free enterprise. I'm going to combat abortion. I'm going to try to keep our government honest, fight separatism, oppose anti-militarism, fight government profligacy. Now there's a sesquipetal word, Jose. Remember what a sesquipetal word is? Sesqui, 1.5. Pedal, foot. A sesquipetal word is a word that's 1.5 feet long. Profligacy is the term that you might use to describe the spending habit of a drunken sailor. Now, was it yesterday or the day before? I really laid it on our governor and our ethics commission for profligacy, but I didn't use the drunken sailor analogy. 2 reasons. 1, even drunken sailors can't spend their money that fast. And 2, I have too much respect for sailors. Let's see. I'm also going to provide an issue-oriented radio talk show. And today, I'm going to fight corruption. And I'm really glad that I'm not out there doing this by myself. In fact, I'm not even the main event. Troy is really the guy carrying water on fighting corruption. Thank you very much, Troy. So that's what I'm going to do to make Guam great again. Now, I'm going to take a look at today's calendar, and we start out with today's calendar with systemic racism. And I'll explain that when we get to the card. Then we have the Public Law 36-34 violations. Next item on the card is KUAM Awakens, which starts out with the foundation of Troy, meaning Candid, versus the Post, the Daily News, KUAM, PNC, and Pacific Island Times. And then I've got I've got GOP versus profligacy, and that's a takeoff on the governor versus the workers in Bill 24. Then I've got Doug versus Esteves. I've got the Carl versus Milton Morinaga, Russia versus Ukraine, etc. So let's start right out with systemic racism. Systemic racism, we started out with a letter to the editor by a guy named Paul Zerzan. And Paul Zerzan wrote this letter December 1st, 2021. And this is what he said. The world is undergoing rapid change and cultures are experiencing traumatic shocks as cherished myths are destroyed by cruel realities. Guam is no exception, and we're far enough into the 21st century to face a very ugly fact concerning the false basis concerning something very central to the Chamorro belief system, and since it very much concerns feasting associated with the holiday season, now is a good time as any to acknowledge a plain truth. There is no such thing as red rice. Repeating for emphasis, there is no such thing as red rice. The achoti-colored rice traditionally eaten on Guam is orange and not red. Calling it red rice for centuries does not make it red. It's orange, and a color wheel is not needed to see this. So please, let's stop looking foolish by calling it red rice, and let's call it by its proper name, orange rice.
How dare you?
Yeah. Even Greta Thunberg took issue with that. So here's what we're talking about. This is the platter that you see every time you go to a large gathering, fiesta, fandango, christening party, whatever. There it is. It's orange. You see the tall tale sign beside it? That's red. You see the cryon below it? That's orange. So what we've been calling red rice all these years is not red rice. It's orange. And Paul Zerzan calls us on it. Well, the Daily News ran that letter. A couple days later, they came back with this. Readers to Zerzan, leave our red rice alone. And they solicited comments, and let me see, I've got one here that I kind of like. The majority vehemently rejected the proposal, such as Cecile Chargaloff's comment on a post on Group 671 Guam Recipes. Here's what Cecile Chargaloff said. Why change traditions? It's like, here we go again, being invaded. A little identity politics here. Being invaded and changing what is naturally ours to what they think it should be because they don't like it. I don't care if it's not the color of their liking or if it's not dark enough for them. Just leave what is traditional thing to be just that, tradition. Yeah.
And they also introduced some attempt at wokeness, because I don't think Paul Zerzan had mentioned his pronouns.
Exactly. He didn't tell us what his pronouns were when he came along. So others have picked up on that. As an example, Tim called out Michael Bavacqua, one of the separatists, because Bavacqua wrote a column about abortion being something that was part of the old Chamorro culture. Chamorro women were independent, etc. And he took this from an article by a university professor named Don Rubenstein. And the language that Bavacqua cited was in Rubenstein's article, and he pulled it out. But Tim came back on Jungle Watch. You should have read the whole article, because the rest of the article debunked what Bavacqua said. But, of course, Bavacqua's sticking with the narrative. He's pro-abortion. So the facts and reality and the truth don't matter. It's the narrative that counts. And that's why I keep coming back to systemic racism, because we run into that all the time here on the show, where people are so stuck with their narratives that they don't care what the truth is. They're going to stick with the narrative and to the derogation of the truth. And see, I had another one here. My papers are kind of a mess. Where even Vanessa Williams thought the rice was orange. Paul Zerzan, by the way, got canceled by the Daily News. They won't run his stuff. They won't run his letters anymore because he stepped on a line, obviously, right?
So did they give him a scarlet letter?
Yeah.
Colored orange.
Colored orange, yeah. Right. Very good, Jose. So, yeah, I can't find the one I'm looking for from yeah, I'll find it tomorrow. Yeah, let's take a short break.
Every company needs money to grow and take on the challenges 2023 will bring.
That's why Bank Pacific's commercial loan officers stand ready to help you.
We offer several programs tailored to assist companies to get to the next step or perhaps for a startup.
Including working with SBA or GITA.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches.
Bank Pacific.
We want to be your partner.
Equal Opportunity Lender. Member FDIC.
Credit conditions apply.
Attention investors, Century 21 Realty Management is proud to present an investment opportunity you have to look at. Ladera Towers Condominium provides luxury living centrally located in Manila with access to the entire island. Ladera Towers has 3-bedroom condominium units available now. See them before they're all gone. 4-bedroom units sold out. This investment is only going to appreciate in value. Call now, Century 21 Realty Management. The number is 647-5003 or visit LaderaTowerGuam.com or GuamProperties.com.
So I use this as an analogy when we run into this oftentimes occurrence where people who are so caught up in their narrative will willfully ignore the truth, the facts, and what's really going on, and just give you the narrative. And one of the things that I picked up, it's just a short one here, goes like this: Supreme Injustice. This is from a website called Opt Out. And they call it Supreme Injustice. Since the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, since the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, a number of states have clamped down on abortion rights or eliminated them altogether. In Nebraska, lawmakers are considering a heartbeat bill which would ban the often life-saving procedure after 6 weeks. So abortion is an often life-saving procedure. Tell that to the aborted baby.
They're so knee-deep in their narrative, they don't even get it.
Exactly. So that's what I mean when I talk about systemic racism. Now, a restaurant opened in Vegas, owned by Cotman and Frank Tenorio, and the name of it is Red Rice. So there's a restaurant in Vegas called Red Rice. And guess what they serve? Guess what they call it?
Red rice,
Yeah.
orange rice.
Yeah. And I pick on them every day, and I'm doing it as a form of advertising because I'm hoping that one of our tailgaters will go to the restaurant or call them up and say, hey, you got to listen to Tall Tales because that guy on Tall Tales is picking on you every day and giving you a lot of really good free advertising. So you might want to clue in on that. Yeah, I want to help them because I want their restaurant to be successful. And, of course, I like to talk about the whole systemic racism phenomenon and how easy it is for people to lose their real sense of what's correct and what's wrong when they get caught up in a narrative. Next item on the card is the Public Law 36-34 portion of the statute, of the agenda. And I'm looking at the Department of Education Division of Special Ed. And they're going to have a public meeting on February 11th on Saturday. Is that legal? Gov Guam doesn't work on Saturday. Yeah, but they are. Saturday, February 11th at 8:30 a.m. They've got 9 items on their agenda. Item number 6 is called New Business. And they don't tell you what new business is, which means whatever they do at that meeting on Saturday is void, because ever since June of last year, the law has required that when notices of meetings and commissions, boards and commissions are sent out, there has to be a notice 7 days before and 2 days before the board or commission. That notice has to contain the agenda of the meeting, telling you what's going to be talked about, and there has to be a description of the agenda items sufficient to put the public on notice of what's going on. So when they just say new business, it doesn't work. And the teeth in the statute is that a meeting that's held when the notice is improper, whatever they did at the meeting is void. So you'd think that over at education they'd be better at it, but they're not. And then I stumbled across something else that's really interesting on the agenda for Monday, February 6th. That's day after tomorrow. It's a hearing that's going to start at 5 p.m. They probably did this deliberately, right? How can I go to a 5 p.m. public? No, I can't.
You cannot.
No. And this is a hearing on Bill 13, an act to amend blah, 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 relative to increasing public notice and transparency of the actions by the Guam 21st Century Healthcare Center Committee responsible for the proposed medical healthcare campus. So the governor's set up this committee. They don't think the open government law applies to them. If that's the case, Therese Titlahi is going to make it apply to them. Anything that opens up more windows, that makes for more transparency, has got to be a really good thing that we champion here on Tall Tales. Okay, we're just about up to the big halftime show. I wonder where another Joe is today. Okay, next item on the card is KUAM wakes up. And this is built on the foundation created by an earlier post called Troy versus Post, PDN, KOAM, PNC, and Pacific Island Times. And it's because Troy, over there at Candid News, candidnews.com if you haven't been there, Troy went and found some search warrants that had been sealed since 2019, sealed by the United States Attorney. And he went through these search warrants with a fine-tooth comb, and he came up with some really interesting things about police corruption involving Boom Montanonia, Boom's cousin Ken Montanonia, and some other folks, all involving the narcotics industry, and extremely shocking as to what these people were doing, according to these affidavits. Now, these papers that Troy combed through, have to be seen as at least arguably trustworthy, because they were papers put together, I suppose, with the assistance of the FBI in order to procure search warrants to go out and find bad people. So this is not over the back fence gossips or something like that. But Troy went out and dug it up, causing me to say, whatever happened to the so-called mainstream media here? The Post, the Daily News, KUAM. Well, PNC, we know why they didn't cover it, because Boom didn't send them a press release, right?
That's exactly why.
Yeah. Or the Pacific Island Times, which is not as frequent, but probably sets a pretty high standard when it comes to digging things up. As an example, the corruption that they unearthed down in Palau.
And there's a lot.
Yeah. So when I went through this, I said, my comment was, Troy's done all the heavy lifting, mixing metaphors. Troy's done the spade work. Will any of the other five pick it up and do anything with it? Well, KUAM finally did. The other four are maintaining radio silence. So we'll come back to this right after the big halftime show in Rogues Gallery.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Watching over us, I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. A high-altitude balloon spotted over the western United States. The Pentagon convinced it's spying for Beijing. They say they've taken steps to prevent it from gathering sensitive information, but they will not bring it down.
President Biden asked for options for dealing with the balloon, and Pentagon officials advised against shooting it down because of the risks of the heavy spy equipment the balloon is apparently carrying, injuring or killing Americans on the ground. ground.
Fox's Jonathan Hunt. House Speaker McCarthy says the president cannot remain silent about the balloon. And on Fox's The Ingram Angle, Florida Congressman Michael Waltz outraged.
This is part of the lack of pushback, the total lack of pushback, whether it's the assault on Taiwan, whether it's buzzing our planes. Now they're overflying our nuclear sites, and they keep getting away with it because we let them.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken is scheduled to travel to China in a few days. It's not clear if that will change now. The House has voted along party lines to remove Congresswoman Ilhan Omar from the House Foreign Affairs Committee over remarks she said she didn't know were considered anti-Semitic.
Democrats say Omar's removal is retribution for the last Congress, stripping committees from Representatives Marjorie Taylor Greene for extremist rhetoric and Paul Gosar for sharing a violent video directed at another member.
Fox's Lauren Blanchard, but House Speaker Kevin McCarthy says that's not the case.
If it was tit for tat, we would have picked people, took them off all committees, and said nothing about it. We don't believe in that.
President Biden scheduled to appear before the Democrat National Committee's winter meetings Friday in Philadelphia. Police in Los Angeles now say there is no evidence that a man arrested in a high-rise apartment Tuesday with several weapons pointed at a nearby park was planning a mass shooting, despite earlier saying there was a high chance they had thwarted a potential massacre. America is listening to Fox News.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tinactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
Questions are arising out of a request from Hunter Biden's lawyers for a Justice Department investigation into the public release of information found on his abandoned laptop.
Here's the question critics are asking. How can the Hunter Biden team call for a criminal investigation and presumably charge someone for disseminating information from the laptop that his own team isn't willing to say is actually his? And if that doesn't make sense to you, truth is you are not alone. But that's the essence of a batch of letters sent this week by Hunter's attorneys in which they're demanding federal and state prosecutors and the IRS launch investigations into those involved with distributing the contents of Mr. Biden's files from the now infamous laptop.
Fox's Kevin Corke. The Justice Department is already investigating Hunter Biden's business dealings. Congressional Republicans are planning to. A judge in Texas has delayed next week's scheduled execution of a man who'd been convicted of killing 3 teenagers 25 years ago. The judge ruling the state had not properly informed John Ballantyne's attorney of the execution date, but he urged the prosecutors to reset the date as soon as possible with proper notice. A community in New Jersey is in shock after the murder of a city councilwoman.
There is still shock in Sayreville over the death of Councilwoman Eunice Dwumfor and the irony that went with her main focus.
Outside of her normal duties as being a voting member of the council, was chair of the Public Safety Committee.
Sayreville Business Administrator Glenn Skarzinski tells Fox News Dwumfor was a gentle yet persuasive member of council. Police speculate she may have been targeted. Skarzinski says that's difficult to believe.
I can't think of anything that she could have done or said that would have made her a target of such a heinous act.
Local and state police are part of the murder investigation. In Newark, New Jersey, Gernal Scott, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Attention investors, Century 21 Realty Management is proud to present an investment opportunity you have to look at. Ladera Towers Condominium provides luxury living centrally located in Manila with access to the entire island. Ladera Towers has 3-bedroom condominium units available now. See them before they're all gone. 4-bedroom units sold out. This investment is only going to appreciate in value. Call now, Century 21 Realty Management. The number is 647-5003 or visit LaderaTowerGuam.com or GuamProperties.com.
Every company needs money to grow and take on the challenges 2023 will bring.
That's why Bank Pacific's commercial loan officers stand ready to help you.
We offer several programs tailored to assist companies to get to the next step or perhaps for a startup,
including working with SBA or GITA.
Now we're banking on the future. Services that you want to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches.
Bank Pacific.
we want to be your partner.
Equal opportunity lender. Member FDIC.
Credit conditions apply.
Wishing you a happy, healthy, and prosperous new year from your friends at Security Title. As we clean house for the new year, this is an excellent time to make sure the title to your land is also in order. It doesn't matter if you own a ranch in Inarajan, a house in Dedido, or a hotel in Tumon. Keeping the ownership clear promotes peace in the family and can avoid future misunderstandings. When it comes to your family property, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
For your safety and convenience, please listen to this important message. Lower monthly bills in Guam's energy future are coming. The construction of the Ukadu power plant will begin soon, requiring heavy haul components to be transported from the Port Authority to Ukadu. Expect traffic delays as the transport convoy will be traveling on Marine Corps Drive at 1 mile per hour for 12 hours. Please drive carefully. Log on to poweronthemove.org for more information. Doosan Ukadu Power and Doosan Enerbility thank you for your patience. You know, Jose, people are dying to get their faces on the Tall Tales Rogues Gallery. So can you tell them one more time exactly how to go about it?
Absolutely. They can point their browser to thepoint.gu, the official website of this radio station. Click on the picture of the T-shirt and the beard. It'll bring you to the purveyor. Order your T-shirt, and when it arrives, put the T-shirt on, take a selfie, and send that selfie to the Point's WhatsApp at 671-797-8255, and we'll put you on the Tall Tales Rogues Gallery.
Yeah, now this must be really expensive, right, Jose?
It costs nothing to get yourself on the Rogues Gallery.
Such a bargain. Such a deal, as they say.
And we'll play it daily, Monday through Friday.
Right after the big halftime.
Right
it's
after
actually
big halftime.
part of the big halftime show.
It's a big part, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so back to the card here. KOAM's coverage of police corruption goes like this. Search warrants show more police officers allegedly tipping off John Boom Montanonia. Cash, methamphetamine, cars, and public corruption. That's what can be found in the spread of search warrants recently unsealed in the district court. The documents date back to 2016. A 2018 affidavit that the Bureau and the ATF are working on a joint investigation into financial and drug trafficking activities of Audrey Wolford, Eric Aponic, Vincent Rios, and others. The agent stated that the investigation also incorporates public corruption between Wolford, retired police department officer, and former FBI task force member John Boom Montanonia, and his contacts identified as retired Captain Kenneth Montanonia, who was the division chief for the Criminal Investigation Division, with oversight over the now disbanded Mandania Drug Task Force, and Captain Kim Santos. The Montanonias are cousins. Authorities tapped the pair's phones for an entire year. In one message, Boom texts Kenneth Montanonia, quote, "Call urgent," regarding probation officers involved in selling meth. A couple days later, Kenneth Montanonia messages Boom that they set up a surveillance team at the drug house in Malolo. The feds learned Boom was allegedly paying his cousin for sensitive law enforcement investigative information. Investigators also tapped into Captain Santos' messages with Boom over that same time frame. The FBI concluded Boom allegedly got sensitive law enforcement information from Santos on one occasion, picking up documents at GPD records. Where else? The intel all to help Wolford and others smuggle meth into the island undetected. They were eventually caught. The feds allege Boom solicited drug dealers, getting them to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for protection for sensitive information. Okay, so that's that part of it. Now we go from there to the chief of police. And I mentioned yesterday that you could pretty well depend on Steve to say something really stupid. So here we go. Police Stephen Ignacio, said he's unaware of the newly released details. Since I became chief, I'm not aware of anything that was ever brought to my attention by any federal agency, he told KUAM News. Again, that's the feds. They don't discuss their cases with me. Just some, but not all. And in this case, I was not aware of this investigation. He did say he would look at the unsealed documents. Whoa. There's a whole attachment of numbers being called and recorded conversations. So it's a lot to digest. And I'll probably have Internal Affairs open up a case to see, because the allegations are against Mandana, which includes current, former, and current members. He said, I don't know really, other than the name being mentioned, of 2 retired police officers. In the meantime, Boom Montanonia is set to appear back in court next month. So there's our chief of police.
Sergeant Schultz.
Yeah, I don't know anything about this. I'll have somebody take a look at those. You know, this is some of the most important news that we've seen in years and years and years. And no, they didn't tell me about it, so Mox Nix. That's our chief of police. They probably didn't tell him anything about his motorcycle, so he probably wasn't very interested.
Maybe that's why he's in that position.
Maybe. Okay, next item on the card is GOP, the Republicans versus profligacy. And this picks up on the governor and her Bill 24. Now, a couple of days ago, I got into, first of all, the governor sent a letter to the speaker saying that pursuant to chapters 4 and 6 of Title 4 of the Guam Code annotated, the director of administration is supposed to do a workup on some Hay study numbers and make recommendations to the governor as to how to deal with the salary structure of government employees. Now, the governor letter makes it look like once she has that, she can just order that it be done and just order that the salaries be increased in accordance with the director's recommendation. Director of Administration recommended 22% across the board. That's what the governor's letter to the speaker said. We're going to do this. And then the governor also sent a bill to the speaker, Bill 24-37. And Bill 24-37 appropriates $16 million to pay for these raises. Now, the governor's letter said she made the decision on January 31 and that the raises are to kick in on April 1. And when this came up, I said, we've seen this movie before. It's what's called the government employee salary mousetrap. And it's the same thing that happened with the teachers. The governor comes out and says, I'm going to give the teachers a raise. That time it was with the federal money that would last only up until September 30. And really trapping the legislature, because when that money was gone on September 30, teachers would be thinking, well, it's okay because the legislature will appropriate money beyond that. And if they didn't, of course, conventional wisdom tells you that the 11,000 government of Guam employees are the largest block of voters on the island. So the governor just kind of trapped them into coming up with an appropriation, even though Frank Blas said, hey, you didn't do it according to law, according to the procedures. But they passed that appropriation anyhow. Now, this looks like it's the same thing all over again. The governor says, hey, guys, everybody Gov Guam 22%. And all of the government of Guam employees are getting out their phones and calling up their calculators in there and figure, well, wow, you know, how much I'll be making per payday at 22%. And some of them have probably already figured out how they're going to spend that money. So does the legislature, or do the Republicans, or do the coalition, do they want to be the Grinch that stole the government pay raises? Because that's exactly what the governor's setting up here. She's setting it up so that the folks are all, depending on the raise, they're all going to have warm tummies. Oh, Lou, I'm so glad I voted for Lou. She's going to give us a 22% raise. And then when they see what Frank Blas said, oh, damn those Republicans. Don't they know how expensive it is to live here on this island? Don't they have any compassion for government employees? And so the pressure will be on the GOP to come along and not oppose the Democrat majority if that's exactly what they want to do. Now, ordinarily, I would have thought that the Democrat majority would be anxious to get this bill on for a public hearing, get it on the floor, and pass it. But that was then, this is now, because, you know, the Democrat Party is now split. Amanda Shelton, Chris Barnett, and Speaker Telahi signed up with the 6 Republicans to make a coalition. And Shelton and especially Speaker Telahi, it was very clear they were not in the governor's pocket. And it's also very clear that the governor didn't want Telahi to be speaker this time around. So it may very well be that the governor drove Therese Telahi into the arms of the waiting 6 Republicans. So the 6 Republicans and 3 Democrats put Therese back in as speaker. So now we've got this 22% salary increase coming up. It's going to be really interesting to see how it sorts out. And there's a pretty good story in the Post on it. It goes today, and it goes like this. The governor's plans to implement a 22% pay increase for government employees under the general pay plan isn't sitting well with Republican Senator Frank Blas Jr., the minority leader of the legislature. Now, we know that at the very beginning of this legislature, Blas came out and said, we're block voting. You know, we're not going to we're not going to piecemeal our forces. So if the minority leader comes out and says, this is what we're going to do, I think you can pretty well depend on he's speaking for 6 senators, at least, at the minimum. Leon Guerrero on Tuesday approved the adjustment to the GPP pay structure as recommended by, the article says the department, but it wasn't the department. It was the director of administration. Departments don't make recommendations. The governor also submitted legislation to implement the adjustment by April 1 by appropriating $16 million to DOA. Now, I don't read it as implementing the adjustment. I see the adjustment having already been made. It's going to happen whether that $16 million is appropriated or not. That's the way I read it. But it's pretty fuzzy, and it could be either way. But I think the governor wants you to think it's already fait accompli, that it's already done, and the legislature's only task is to appropriate the money. But if the appropriation doesn't happen, then the money's going to have to come from somewhere else. Bloss said he would not support the adjustment. I don't think anybody is going to say that when you can provide a raise that it's not a good thing to do. But prudence and caution should be used with an economy that's still reeling from the devastating effects of the pandemic. Now, globally, with inflation and the threat of a recession, you've got businesses that are still struggling. Is this the right time to be able to do this? I don't think so, Bloss said. The GPP adjustment is intended to help bring pay and associated compensation closer to alignment with market data. Now, that's just BS. You know, when you hire people, you know, the practicalities of it are this. If we're talking about a free market, you hire someone and you pay him enough money so that he won't go to work for somebody else because somebody else is paying more money. And once you hire him, if he performs, you're going to pay him enough to keep him on board. Now, if there's rampant unemployment, you're probably not going to have to give any salary increases because that good employee's got nowhere to go. This is the hard reality of it. And I'm going to introduce a character that we haven't talked about before, and that's Homo economicus, also known as economic man. And the theory of Homo economicus is that people, when they understand the facts involved, will always make financial decisions in their own best interest. So, you know, if you have an employee and you're paying him $35,000 a year and he's doing what he needs to do, and you're making a profit, you're not going to pay him $36,000 just because you want to be a good guy. If he'll stay at 35, then that's how much you pay him. That's Homo economicus. Now, we know that, you know, that there probably is no pure Homo economicus anywhere. And I suppose there's a tendency for some employers to pay somebody a little bit more than what he's worth. It's very difficult to figure out what someone's worth and what the competition is like out there. Sometimes you have an employee that is so good at what he does, you don't want to run the risk. So you probably wind up paying him more than what he's actually worth because you don't want to have to replace him and start over again. But in the government of Guam, you know, almost anyone that you talk to would give you this, you know, government of Guam's really got it made. They've got a retirement, the pay is good, a lot of holidays, good leave, healthy, on and on. Boy, I'd sure like to get into Gov Guam. I'm going to talk to my cousin who's over at DOA and see what he can do for me. You know, and I'll tell you this, one time when I was interviewing people to be a corrections officer at the Department of Corrections, I only had 3 questions that I ask. One of the questions was, why do you want to come to work for a Department of Corrections? And this one guy said, well, you know, I've always wanted to get into Gov Guam, and I figured maybe this would be the only way I could do it. Parentheses, because nobody wants to be a corrections officer. I said, thank you very much. I'm glad you came by here. You can leave now. So, you know, that's where we are right now because Gov Guam employees, you know, you compare the $12 an hour that bus drivers driving the tour buses make comparing the $25 or $30 an hour that school bus drivers make. It's pretty easy. So, you know, the economic reality is that if we didn't give GovGuam employees a 22% salary increase across the board, we wouldn't see half of them jump ship and go somewhere else because there's no place to go. But that's our governor. So the GPP adjustment is intended to help bring pay and associated compensation closer to alignment with market data. There's no market data that shows that government wages are behind what the market pays for comparable work. And to help address the internal equity disparity, there's that word, equity, that exists with autonomous agencies, according to DOA's recommendations. It's the latest in a series of updates that began in 2021 with pay for nurses. Law enforcement came next, followed by the update to educator pay plan, which I talked about at the beginning of this item on the card. Educator pay raises were initially implemented in fiscal 2022, but that was done through the reallocation of the Education Department's American Rescue Plan money. Bloss was among the lawmakers critical of the way the teacher pay raises were executed, as they did not follow the format established by the legislature in the fiscal 2022 budget law, which required implementation to be on June 30, 2023. He criticized the reallocation of ARP funds, otherwise intended for capital improvement projects, to satisfy what he called a political promise. But despite his criticism, Bloss co-sponsored an amendment that adopted the updated educator pay plan into fiscal 2023 budget bill. The authorization to use ARP funds for teacher pay raises was going to expire September 30, 2022, the end of fiscal year 2022. Adopting the educator pay plan facilitated continuation of those increases in fiscal 2023 and beyond. As I explained, you know, the salary increase mousetrap. Local appropriations to the Department of Ed were adjusted to accommodate the pay raises. So that's how the salary increase mousetrap worked the last time, and the governor has pulled it out and put some more cheese into the salary mousetrap. Going on with this article, when asked about any perceived unfairness as other government workers have received pay adjustments, Bloss said it was a matter of affordability. The concern has always been, can we afford it? And in any business, can you afford to be able to give your employees a pay raise? Can you afford to stay open? What local government has got to recognize is that it doesn't create its own money. They rely on the taxes derived from economic activity. And when your economic activity is falling, how then can you justify being able to provide a raise? Bloss said. However, at least in terms of general fund financial reporting, GovGuam is doing better than anticipated. The latest general fund revenue report shows the government currently collecting $29 million above budget. The governor also cited this as a justification for her 2024 budget request, which is about $69 million more than fiscal 2023. That budget request also funds the updated GPP for fiscal 2024, which is expected to require more than $23 million. So let's give everybody a raise, Jose.
Sounds good.
Is she going to include us in that since we talk about her so much?
Nope. Nope. Not at all.
Bloss said the governor would point to a $29 million excess so far this fiscal year, but added that there are bills that still need to be paid. There are repairs that still need to occur. There are processes that need to be fixed. And according to Blas, well, Governor Leon Guerrero thinks things are looking good in the economy. One just has to drive down the street to see how businesses are faring. Blas told the Post he knew of one business that closed its doors over the weekend. How then do we say our economy is recovered when these things are occurring? It doesn't send the right message of how this government should serve the people. The minority leader said the Republican caucus would be meeting today and will come out later with official response to the government's plan to implement the pay raises. But in informal discussions with several members, Blas said the Republicans are surprised and have asked what had happened overnight that Gov Guam has the ability to provide pay raises. So there you go. Let's head for Wrigley Field for the 7th inning stretch, and I'll come back and finish this up.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tinactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagatnya location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
Every company needs money to grow and take on the challenges 2023 will bring.
That's why Bank Pacific's commercial loan officers stand ready to help you.
We offer several programs tailored to assist companies to get to the next step or perhaps for a startup,
including working with SBA or GITA.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches.
Bank Pacific.
We want to be your partner.
Equal opportunity lender. Member FDIC.
Credit conditions apply.
Here's an important message from Dusan Ukudu Power and Dusan Enerbility. The first transport of heavy haul components on Marine Corps Drive will occur on Saturday, February 4th from 2 p.m. to 6 a.m. Sunday morning. Go to poweronthemove.org. Traffic will be delayed. Drive safely.
So here we are, 7th inning stretch at Wrigley Field. That means that I've got 2 more innings, just 2 innings to cover the rest of the card here on Tall Tales. It's going to be tough, but I'm going to give it my best shot. Jose, I just heard you read. Was that the editorial from the Daily News that you read on the air? I thought I'd already covered that.
That was the condensed version. No, this is from the actual press release itself.
Oh, wow. There's not much difference there, is there?
No, there isn't.
I wonder who does the press releases for those guys. Maybe the Daily News could hire them.
This is the one we get paid for.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, so this whole 22% is disappointing, to say the least. You know, this is not the time for government employees to get pay raises when the folks who are not fortunate enough to get work for the government are having such a tough time of it out there. It's poor government, and it's the kind of thing that causes people to lose trust in their government, and to think that, you know, there are really 2 kinds of people here on the island: the favored ones that work for the government of Guam, and then everybody else who doesn't. So pretty disappointing, and I hope that the Republicans fight this tooth and nail. I know that it is politically perilous, but I think it's a fight that they can win if they package their fight correctly, and if they don't have to get out Ralph Buchbaum's book, to use it as their pay plan. You remember Ralph Buchsbaum's book, Jose?
Hey, something about invertebrates.
Does anybody out there remember Ralph Buchsbaum's book? That's going to be the quiz question for today. Ralph Buchsbaum's book, which the Republicans for the last couple legislatures seem to use that as their playbook. Okay, so
there's some really strange takes online also. A lot of people that are trying to agree with this. And one thing that I read that was a really awful take, but it's somebody on social media, was that good for the governor for taking care of her employees. And I'm thinking to myself, well, whose employees?
Yeah.
Number one. And then two, then they said, our people deserve this. Now it's time for the private sector to follow suit and take care of their people. And I'm thinking to myself, you know who paid for her employees? The private sector.
Yeah, yeah. And that goes back, that's why I introduced Homo economicus here. It's not about whether you're a good guy. It's not about whether you have a big heart. It's about hard and fast economics. The simplest rule in economics is try not to spend money that you don't have. The second thing is, the idea of economic man, a man understanding all the facts will make financial decisions to benefit himself. Now, when you're in government, when you're the governor, you don't do it to benefit yourself. You do it to benefit all of the people. And the fact that people would say her employees, it just tells us what a hard uphill fight we have.
It's incredible. I don't think people still don't understand that the government and the private sector are not two entities battling each other.
No.
The government is here to provide an atmosphere and opportunity for the private sector to thrive. And it can't be competing with the private sector by doing 22% pay raises.
And what we'd like to see the government do is provide efficient, effective government operating within the rule of law that provides basic government services on at least a break-even basis. Break-even basis when you start throwing out 22% pay increases.
I mean, if you want a really good career with really good pay, become the executive director of the ethics committee.
Exactly, yeah. And you don't even have to do anything. Yeah, there's no one going to depend on you for any production. Okay, next, I've got the Attorney General versus social justice warriors. And this is an article that ran in the Daily News. AG reviews required archaeological study for building homes on private lots. Realtors point to delays, added costs. Attorney General Douglas Moylan said his office is looking into whether the government may have overstepped its authority by requiring archaeological studies for permits to build houses on private property, contributing to the ongoing Guam housing shortage. Our laws cannot undermine private citizens' property rights, which either the law may not in fact be affecting or may violate a constitutional right, Moylan told the Daily News. Hiring professionals to do an archaeological study cost families between $19,000 and $30,000 and could force delays in building a house or other development on private property, Guam Association of Realtors John Duenas said Thursday. Guam has seen limited availability of residential homes because of a combination of factors: high interest rates on home loans, the skyrocketing cost of construction materials, and labor to build new homes or renovate existing ones. Moreover, the demand for housing is expected to further increase with the relocation of Marines from Okinawa, along with their families and other employees needed to support the relocation. The Guam Association of Realtors asked the Office of the Attorney General to address the legality of the State Historic Preservation Office practice of requiring archaeological investigations for permits to build on private property. They also asked the Attorney General to examine rules that make private property owners handle follow-up mitigation requirements at their own expense as a condition of permit approval. The Realtors Group cited a 2021 communication from the Office of the Attorney General saying the requirement of an archaeological study is not legal. That 2021 communication, penned by then Assistant Attorney General Jessica Toft, answered key questions. First question, can the SHPO, now, okay, you know this is really important. For those who don't understand, the three most important public officials on the island are the governor, Admiral Nicholson at JRM, the governor, Admiral Nicholson, and the SHPO. And of the three, in certain contexts, I think the SHPO is the most powerful. Yeah.
This is how powerful they are. At one time, they prevented the construction of a hut structure at the Paseo, unless you had an archaeological dig. Think about that.
Yeah.
The landfill.
Yeah. Yeah. So, can the SHPO require a private landowner developer to allow the Department of Parks and Rec, starts with a W, and the SHPO to conduct a field investigation on private land? Answer, yes. Question, can the SHPO require a private landowner applicant to hire and pay for a private field investigation? Answer, no. If the SHPO requires a field investigation, then the SHPO must conduct the survey or other investigation of the real property, or the SHPO can hire a private field study at the SHPO's expense, not the landowner, because it's the SHPO's duty to develop a territory-wide survey of historic areas, buildings, and sites. So here's what's going on here. Let's say I want to build a new house. And the SHPO comes out and says, you've applied for a building permit. I got to come out with a sharp stick and poke it in the ground, see what you've got out there. And if you come along and tell me it's your property and I can't come aboard, I will invoke state violence to get you to allow me to come in your property. No, this is not trespassing. So the SHPO does that, and he says, you know, what we saw out there looks like there may be historical remains on your property. You're going to have to hire an archaeological survey team to come out and survey your property to see if there really are any archaeological remains there. Landowner says, gosh, Mr. SHPO, is that going to cost a lot of money? SHPO says between $19,000 and $30,000. You know, I got to Mr. SHPO, I've got a budget here to build this house. I'm just scraping every nickel together that I have. And I've got a mortgage. I can't come up with 19 cents, much less 9. Well, I'm sorry. If you can't, you're not going to get a building permit. The SHPO has spoken. So that's what we're talking about. And so let's start and talk a minute for a private property. One of my favorite books here talks in terms of private property. Let me take a peek at the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution. Let's see, no person, let's see. shall be twice placed in jeopardy, etc., nor deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. You can't deprive someone of his property without due process of law. And if the government really wants your property, then they could use eminent domain, but they got to pay just compensation for the land. So there have been several court cases, that talk in terms of how much regulation amounts to a taking. And my recollection of the case law is that if the land has no commercial use whatsoever, then even if the government doesn't take fee simple title to it, the owner is entitled to just compensation. But there's been a lot of nibbling away at the idea of private property with regulations like the SHPO coming along and saying, well, yeah, I know you own it, and you probably don't know anything at all about archaeological remains or relics, but there may be something there. So if you want a building permit, you got to spend 19 grand. Is there a tribunal? Is there a hearing? No, nothing like that. So, I start out with the proposition I start out with is this, that no economy is going to thrive unless you have free alienability of real property. And that's why the Northern Marianas is in the tank right now. These let's protect the natives type thing aren't going to work. That's why the Chamorro Land Trust never got off the ground, because people that have this land can't alienate it. They can't sell it. They can't mortgage it. So to say that the SHPO can come along and do this, forget about private property. It's private property so long as the SHPO is satisfied that you don't have a pottery shard somewhere buried out in your realty. And then the SHPO is not only powerful, but he's very brassy. So Jessica Toft, an assistant attorney general, advised the SHPO, no, you can't make people pay for that. If you think it's necessary, it's your job. You do it, or you hire somebody to do it at government expense, but don't expect the landowner to do it. Okay, John Duenas goes on and said, despite the 2021 communication, SHPO is still continuing to require an archaeological study. Well, remember what I told you, Jose? It's the governor, Admiral Nicholson, and the SHPO. How about the Chief Justice? No. The Attorney General? No. The SHPO, yeah. So the question we're proposing to the AG is, we believe that this practice is contrary to the law, and as we understand it, the permit applicants that are affected by this practice are financially damaged and the projects are unduly delayed. What recourse do they have to drop the practice or do away with the practice that are affecting their application for permits? Duane said at a January 27 real estate industry town hall. Well, the answer to that, of course, is file suit against the SHPO. That's the first answer. Patrick Lujan, Guam State Historic Preservation Officer, on Thursday said the SHPO doesn't impose the requirement of archaeological study on applicants. In fact, 90 to 93% of permits we review are approved within a week with no archaeological requirements needed. The other few are deemed high probability based on historical data dating over 100 years of land mapping and information, and what we found out from Dave Lotz in his letter to the editor yesterday. Luan also said that the 2021 communication from OAG regarding the matter is guidance and not an official OG, Officer of Attorney General opinion, which he said states, when issuing a certificate of approval to the few permits that are deemed high probability, We do not require archaeological surveys be conducted unless there is a positive, clear evidence of historic properties on the subject lot. So this is a lot of nerve, chutzpah. Jessica Toft, an assistant attorney general, gives advice to the SHPO, who is apparently part of her beat. And he said, well, yeah, but it's just advice. It's not an attorney general's opinion. Pay no attention to that assistant attorney general over there. That's lawless, is what it amounts to. Luan said the SHPO is in the process of rewriting the historical preservation laws. And there we go again. He's rewriting the laws with hopes of gaining clarity in this particular issue, as well as other vague and or conflicting statutes. He said SHPO is working with Roy Kanata, whose committee has oversight of historic preservation. Moylan said he has committed to the Association of Realtors to review laws that affect island residents and their ability to enjoy and use their lands. They're not the SHPO's lands. On Guam, land is very important to all of us, especially local families who are often cash poor, but have much land they want for their children and grandchildren. The AG added that he met recently with Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio, who also mentioned the matter to him. We both agree that we must find a solution to how government officials may be interpreting a statute meant to balance our history and government's cultural preservation efforts, current law against the rights of private property owners as contained in that law. Well, I want that balance to shift towards private property owners. You know, otherwise it's just one more example of the downhill road to statism. That's exactly where we're heading.
I'm trying to understand, and I know we're going to a break soon, but I'm trying to understand where he said we're not going to do anything until we find something, and then we're going to break the law.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what he said?
Basically, yeah.
Quoted. All right.
Okay, so we've got to go to Churchill Downs, and we're going to come back and talk to Johnny Utah.
All three stations, all three morning shows. Thanks to all the listeners for Pika's Best, Choice Broadcasting has swept the top three best radio stations. The Point, Boss 104, and Star 101. Top three radio personalities, Kyle Mandapat, Ray Gibson, and Daryl Lizama. Put the power of Pika's Best to work for you. If you're an advertiser, call 671-888-7346 for information, rates, and packages. And let us get your message out to Pika's Best listeners with Pika's Best Broadcasters. And thanks for listening to Pika's Best. Attention investors, Century 21 Realty Management is proud to present an investment opportunity you have to look at. Ladera Towers Condominium provides luxury living centrally located in Manila with access to the entire island. Ladera Towers has 3-bedroom condominium units available now. See them before they're all gone. 4-bedroom units sold out. This investment is only going to appreciate in value. Call now, Century 21 Realty Management. The number is 647-5003 or visit laderatowerguam.com or guamproperties.com.
Now we got two batters in the on-deck circle there. I look over there and I see Johnny Utah swinging 3 bats, getting ready to step into the plate. And then we've got our Keith, who ordinarily smacks that ball right out of the park, Jose. So we got a couple of really heavy hitters coming up, starting out with all the way from Salt Lake City, none other than the legendary Johnny Utah. Let's give him a hand, Jose.
Hello.
Is that the best we can do, Jose? Yeah. Yeah, welcome aboard, Johnny Utah. Tell me about the SHPO.
Real quick, I want to give time to our Keith. I noticed that it's a catch-22, the archaeological dig, regardless of whether the landowner pays for it, or whether or not the government comes in and says, well, we're going to require you to have one, and we're going to pay for it, and we're going to take care of everything. Well, what do you think? We all know at what speed the federal government and Guam moves at.
Yeah.
So they can lock up that property pending that archaeological dig for God knows how long. You know, if Guam has to pay for it and has to schedule it, has to manage the archaeological dig, you know, you might not be able to unlock your property for 5-6 years.
Yeah, only young.
Then again,
only
you got
young,
to pay for it.
only young people shouldn't get it. Only young people. If you're over 30, forget it. You're not going to live long enough to get it done.
Right, yeah. So it's a catch-22. You're not going to win. You have no property rights.
Good call, Johnny Utah. Johnny,
okay.
Are you up to speed on that hospital in Salt Lake City that's gone woke?
Can you give me a brief synopsis?
I'll see if I can put something on the card for Monday then, Johnny Utah. Thanks a lot for calling, Johnny.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we have our Keith. Looks like you're going to be the cleanup hitter here today.
Okay. I actually can answer the question of how long these archaeological studies take. Having written some of those reports and work plans and worked on projects like this, if one were to hire a consultant, any work plan and reports need to be approved by SHPO. And the ones that we have done or worked with, 3 to 4 years on an uncomplicated project where nothing is found.
That's the fast track, right?
Yeah, that honestly is the fast track. Now, if you had come across, God forbid, human remains or anything archaeologically significant, well, it goes up from there.
Yeah.
But the reason I called, no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, something that when you were reading Patrick Mahan's statement, there was something that caught my ear, that SHPO is rewriting the laws.
Well, I mentioned that he's one of the 3 most powerful guys on the island. He can keep you from using your private property. He can rewrite the laws. He doesn't have to pay any attention to legal guidance from an assistant attorney general. He's a powerful dude.
I guess I need to go back and, reread some of my my history. I was always under the impression that the legislature writes laws.
Well, I think that historically that's true, but we haven't had the SHPO that long. And probably if you were to pose that question to the SHPO, he'd say, well, yeah, that was then, but this is now.
Yeah, get with the times, yes.
Yeah, you got to be flexible and keep up with the times.
Okay. Just something that caught my ear. I was like, well, that's rather presumptuous.
Yeah, it is. Okay, Keith.
Have a good weekend.
See it? Well, we can't. You know how
well,
it goes.
As good as you can.
Yeah, we just sit around and moan about no tall tales. We won't come back to life until 1600 Monday afternoon. Then we'll be back here full of piss and vinegar. Good talking to you, Keith. So how much time do I got? I don't have any time at all. Sorry, another Joe. I got to say goodbye to our president. Let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Not a bird. It's It's not a plane. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. U.S. Air Defense Command is following a high-altitude balloon over the western U.S., suspected of spying for the Chinese.
The Pentagon says it's been tracking for several days a Chinese surveillance balloon that entered U.S. airspace to spy on sensitive sites in Montana, one of 3 sites where the U.S. houses its siloed nuclear weapons. A senior U.S. defense official told reporters the U.S. government acted immediately to protect against collection of sensitive information. The balloon is still hovering over the continental United States. President Biden was advised by the head of U.S. Northern Command not to shoot down the spy balloon.
Fox's Jennifer Griffin at the Pentagon. House Speaker McCarthy demanding an intelligence briefing for leaders of Congress. Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeting that President Biden is impotent. House Democrats are upset over a vote to remove Congresswoman Ilhan Omar from the House Foreign Affairs Committee.
This is about targeting women of color in the United States of America.
Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but House Speaker McCarthy called for Omar's removal from the committee over comments she'd made about Israel. The ice storm that brought parts of Texas to a virtual halt this week is over, but more than 320,000 electric customers in the state are still without power. Utilities say so many power lines came down under the weight of the ice, it could be days before the lights are back on. Bitter cold weather will grip much of the northern part of the country today into Saturday. Sherry Spear is a meteorologist at Fox affiliate WFXT in Boston.
We've got weather alerts posted Friday and Saturday. This is the coldest weather, not just the coldest weather of the year, but